Hello again, everyone. I think it's time that we can get started now. Thank you very much for attending the June edition of Dragon Trail's monthly webinar series. Today, we'll be talking about hotel trends for the Chinese outbound travel market, as well as ways that you can use WeChat for the customer journey for hotel bookings, inspiration, and everything through to customer service. So today's webinar will last maybe about 30 to 45 minutes. Afterwards, we'll have time for a Q&A session. We'll start out by talking about hotel trends for Chinese tourists, both internationally and domestically, and then we'll look at the many different ways that hotels are using WeChat to service their customers, and then finally look more deeply at the kinds of guest engagement opportunities that you can do using WeChat now. So before we get started, I'll just introduce myself. I know a lot of you may have come to our webinars before and will have heard me. My name's Sienna. I'm the communications manager at Dragon Trail Interactive. I write most of the content that you'll see on the Dragon Trail Interactive website with reports and articles about trends in Chinese tourism and the Chinese digital landscape. And I'm also the co-editor of the 2015 book, China, the Future of Travel. Today I'll be joined by my colleague Saxon Booth, who's the Director of Business Development for Dragon Trail. Saxon, I'm not sure if you'd like to say hello now and introduce yourself a bit.
Hi everybody. So yeah, I'm Saxon. I'm based in the Shanghai office of Dragon Trail. I'm the Director of Business Development, so I lead up a team of business developers and digital strategists here helping tourism brands around the globe reach and connect with Chinese travelers. And I'll hand back to Sienna now. Is there some static coming through the line, Sienna?
I can hear some static from you.
Okay, I'll mute again.
But maybe when it's just you talking later, maybe that will be okay.
Okay, cool.
Hope for the best.
Back to you.
Okay, thank you. So again, I know many of you will be very familiar with Dragon Trail as a company and will have attended our webinars in the past, but for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, we are a digital marketing agency that focuses entirely on the Chinese outbound travel market. And so because we're so focused, it means that we have a lot of very specific knowledge around this area. And the Chinese digital landscape and digital marketing, as well as the Chinese outbound tourism market. So our clients, we have clients on every continent except for Antarctica, and the clients comprise many different kinds of organizations and businesses in the travel sector, including national tourism boards and airlines, cruise lines, destination management organizations. But we also do work with a number of hotel groups and individual hotel properties as well. So I'll get started now by talking about hotel trends for Chinese travelers, both outbound and domestic, actually. So we'll get started by talking about market demographics. And here in Chinese outbound travel in general, the millennial market is very important, and this is no less so for hotels. In some ways, it's even more important to look at this younger demographic when it comes to hotels. Currently, the Chinese outbound tourism market is about 60% millennial. And when we say millennial, we're talking about the age range of about 18 to 34. And when Chinese people talk about this generation, they don't say millennial, they'll talk about the post-80s and post-90s generation. So that's anyone born in the 1980s and anyone born in the 1990s. And these are the groups that are the most important when it comes to the hotel industry in China right now. When we look at memberships for hotel loyalty programs, it's by and large dominated by consumers who were born in the 1980s. And last year, the 1990s generation became the second largest group for hotel loyalty programs in China, surpassing the generation born in the 1970s for the first time. So now this younger generation is really driving everything. So not only are they such a big group, but they're also increasing quite a lot. We can see when we're looking at new members for the OTA C trip, for instance, that there's been a huge growth rate in customers who are under the age of 30. Today we'll also be talking quite a bit about the OTA Meituan Dianping and Meituan hotels, because this has emerged as a very important player just in the last year or so. I think when we think about Chinese OTAs, I at least tend to think about Ctrip as really dominating everything. But Meituan Dianping is getting really big really fast, and this is especially in the area of hotels. We'll see later how Ctrip is not the leader anymore in many respects, and is losing ground to Meituan when it comes to hotel bookings. So Meituan Dianping, they, by and large, the majority of their users were born in the 1980s and 90s at 71%, and less than 30% of their users were born in the 1970s or earlier. Now, when it comes to hotel bookings that are made using the Meituan Hotel app, the proportion of millennials gets even larger, where actually 90% of their hotel bookings are coming from consumers who are under the age of 35. So this younger demographic is really someone that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about marketing to Chinese outbound travelers. So with that in mind, we also have to think about the kinds of advice that we give to hotels for things to do that will best welcome and accommodate Chinese travelers. And there are a number of pieces of advice that we've been giving to hotels for a very long time since Chinese outbound travel really started to grow. And I think a lot of these are still very relevant, but many of them are less relevant than they used to be, and tastes and the market has changed quite a lot. So we can go through some of the more traditional advice and then move on to what's more important now. So traditionally, we would say that you have to have green tea in the hotel room, and you have to have an electric kettle for boiling water, because Chinese people will either like to drink tea or to drink hot water. I would still say that having an electric kettle is a nice thing to have in a hotel room. I mean, this really goes for British guests as well as Chinese guests, and it is nice to be able to make your own tea or coffee in the room. Another thing that we would advise that hotels have is slippers in the room, because Chinese people always take off their shoes when they enter a home or a hotel room and like to switch into slippers. I think that in many ways this would still be expected, especially from a luxury hotel, but it's not the breaking point where somebody won't want to stay in the hotel anymore because there aren't slippers. But again, it does kind of say something about the quality of the hotel, and especially for kind of a 4 or 5-star property might still be something that's expected. One way that has changed a lot is that we used to advise hotels that they should have Chinese food, and especially Chinese breakfast options and a breakfast buffet. And I think this is really no longer the case. Even when we're looking at older travelers and group travelers in Europe, it seems that older Chinese people are perfectly happy to eat a Western breakfast as long as it contains some hot items. So scrambled eggs will suffice. You don't necessarily have to have noodles or fried dough sticks or dumplings. And increasingly, we're seeing that young Chinese travelers are actually really interested in food as a part of their travel experience, and they want to try local cuisines, and they might be more interested in having that than the kinds of Chinese dishes that they can get when they're at home. Traditionally, also, we would tell hotels to be careful about the number 4, which is unlucky in most Asian cultures because it sounds similar to the word for death. I think that younger Chinese travelers would not worry about being on the 4th floor, having a hotel room that has the number 4 in it. This might still be relevant for older travelers from southern China, but I don't think that it's something to lose sleep over. I've also put the Marriott and Starwood logo here, and this is to represent big name hotel brands. I think when we're talking about older Chinese travelers and Chinese travelers in the past, they wanted to stay at big hotel brands because that's what they knew. These kinds of big hotel names, they have many properties around China, and so people are very familiar with them. They know the kind of quality that they can expect to get from something like a Westin or a Sheraton, and so they would feel more comfortable as less experienced travelers booking a hotel with that name that they recognized. But more and more people are using travel review sites where they can get an idea of what a hotel might be like by reading reviews from other Chinese travelers who have been there before. And they're increasingly interested in trying boutique hotels or getting a more unique experience to the destination that they're visiting, and aren't quite so tied to the big name brands anymore. So now the advice that we would give to hotels is, I would say the number one piece of advice is to offer free Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is very important for kind of logistical reasons. The traveler will want to be able to use maps and in-destination apps that will help them with their tourist experience. They also want to stay connected to friends and family back in China and around the world. And they also want to share their experience on social media, really like any millennials in the world. And so this is very important when it comes to generating free word-of-mouth marketing. So it's really only in your best interest to offer free Wi-Fi. And we'll see later that this is really something that Chinese travelers demand from hotels. So as I mentioned before, now you might not need to worry about Chinese breakfast. The younger travelers will want to try local foods and photograph them and put them on WeChat and talk about your hotel. So all of that works very well for you. We are seeing from the annual Hotels.com and China International Travel Monitor survey last year that there's an increasing interest in moving away from traditional hotels and considering things like vacation rentals and home sharing. But that said, I wouldn't worry too much as a hotel that Airbnb will suddenly steal all of your Chinese business, because we can see that even for younger generations in China, people are still, sorry, I was just seeing something on the chat. I should mention also that if you have questions along the way, if you could please use the Q&A button to ask them, because it makes it easier for us to see them and make sure that we answer them all than by using the chat function. So as I was saying, hotels are still the preferred accommodation for Chinese people in general and for younger Chinese people. And when we look at China's Generation Z, which would be post-95s in the way Chinese people think about generations, they actually are more likely to want to stay at a hotel rather than something like home sharing than Western people of the same generation are. So switching gears a little bit here, we'll look at some booking behaviors. This information all comes from the Mafangwo Global Independent Traveler Survey. Mafangwo is one of China's leading travel review websites and OTAs, and this information came out at the very end of last year. So in the past, when we talked about Chinese booking behavior, you would have a very long lead time where people were planning their trips like 3 months in advance and booking everything really early. And this lead time is getting shorter and shorter. I think it has to do with the use of online booking tools and mobile booking tools, and also younger generations, and also people who are experienced travelers. So maybe they know what they're doing now, and they don't need to try to plan so far ahead of time. And so now we're seeing that 40% are still booking 1 month or more in advance, but actually 25% of Chinese travelers using Mafangwo are booking their hotel the very same week of their travel. And this is for outbound travel too. So what this means for hotels is that you have kind of a bigger timeline, I think, to reach potential customers. And if there's something like a promotion, or you want to do something around a certain holiday or event, you don't need to necessarily plan this so far ahead of time anymore. So there's a bigger, in some ways, there's a bigger window of time to catch the consumer, and that you don't need to do it so far ahead of time, but also realize that they might be looking quite late in their journey and making more last-minute decisions about booking a hotel. But while the lead time is getting shorter, Chinese travelers are still doing quite a lot of research when it comes to booking their travel. When we look at the hotels that they will look at online before making a booking, they'll generally look at around 8 hotels if they're booking a hotel within China, and 19 hotels on average if they're looking at booking a hotel internationally. So that is looking maybe at different price comparison websites, at many different listings, reading reviews, looking at the pictures. So they really are doing a lot of research before they book those hotels, even if they're doing it kind of the week before they travel. And more so, there are a lot of websites in play now when it comes to people researching and booking their hotels and their travel online. So again, in the past, we would think about Ctrip as being the big one. And yes, Ctrip is still really big, but more than half of Chinese millennials are using all 10 of these top websites that are listed here. And Meituan Hotels actually has the biggest market share. But you can see that not only are travelers looking at lots of different properties, but they're also looking at lots of different websites too. And so this gives you an idea to, if you're doing kind of online reputation management, don't just see what your listing and reviews look like on Ctrip. There are all these other websites that you might want to check out as well to see what your brand presence is like there. Here again is some quite shocking information about Meituan Dianping and their hotel bookings. This number does comprise domestic as well as international hotels, and I would say that Meituan Dianping is stronger when it comes to domestic bookings right now versus Ctrip, which is stronger with international bookings. But Meituan Dianping is becoming more international and catching up very quickly. So what's quite crazy about looking at Q1 for 2018 and the fact that Meituan Dianping actually got more than half of the room night bookings when we look at online hotel bookings in China is that just looking at 2015 to 2016, at this time, Ctrip was getting over half of online bookings, and Meituan Dianping wasn't even really a contender. It wasn't on anyone's radar. And then all of a sudden, it seems like they've come out of nowhere and really caught up very quickly. Meituan Dianping is especially popular with younger travelers, as we've seen, as well as in lower tier cities. So these are the markets that are really emerging and growing very quickly right now and are important to keep an eye on. Another thing about booking behavior is just how mobile first it is. I know we talk a lot about how mobile first China is in general, and this is no less so for travel, and it's grown so fast. So back in 2016, mobile bookings for hotels, that was 53% of the bookings. By 2017, just the next year, that had gone to almost 80%, and it's only going to get bigger. So having a mobile responsive website, mobile bookings, these things are very important when it comes to reaching Chinese consumers. So looking at the kinds of things that Chinese consumers want from their international hotel experience, the Ma Fanghua Global Independent Traveler Report has some very interesting information about the kinds of top topics and top search terms when it comes to looking at hotels. So the most popular topics when it came to overseas hotels last year were beautiful views, special hotel environment, so that includes the decor of the hotel, shopping paradise, Michelin restaurants, and infinity pool. But obviously the kinds of search terms and things that people want from a hotel will vary quite a lot by where the hotel is in the world, and you might expect an infinity pool from your hotel in Thailand, but not your hotel in London. So I just picked a few of the international cities that were on their list as well to have a look at the different kinds of things that consumers will be looking for depending on where the hotel is in the world. And I mentioned before about how important food is becoming for part of the travel experience, especially for young independent Chinese travelers. And this is very evident here, where the #1 topic for London hotels was afternoon tea, and the #1 topic for Parisian hotels was Michelin restaurants. We also see that the kinds of locations that are quite popular, and this gives us some ideas about where Chinese people are likely to be staying in a given city. What is quite interesting, and I wanted to point out here, is that the #5 search term for Parisian restaurants is, hotels, is hotels around opera. So opera is a metro station and a part of Paris. And so looking at that, you might think, oh, the guests, they're really into high culture and they want to go see the opera. But actually, if you plug that search term in Chinese into the internet, you'll get a lot of lists of hotels that are near the Galeries Lafayette department store. So this is a very popular shopping spot for Chinese in Paris. And so you can see they're kind of thinking about their shopping experience even when they're booking their hotel. And so these kind of factors, I think, also give us some good tips if you are a hotel, for instance, in London that offers afternoon tea. Now you know that that is something that Chinese consumers are really looking for and should be part of your marketing. So looking at a different study in the factors in choosing a hotel, this comes from the hotels.com and China International Travel Monitor survey from last summer. So this is an annual survey, and they found that they look also purely at outbound travel, that the most important factors were comfort, star rating, and facilities, followed by safety, reputation, and brand of the hotel, price, and location. In terms of the facilities that Chinese consumers said were the most important for a hotel, the #1 facility was Wi-Fi, with 25% of respondents saying that this was something important that they looked for in a hotel. After that, you've got on-site restaurants and room service, so again, the importance of food, then in-room entertainment and on-site shops. And in terms of places where hotels could improve, what I think is quite interesting here is that 2 out of the top 5 areas where Chinese travelers thought international hotels could improve the most both have to do with language. One of them, the top one, is having Mandarin-speaking staff. And then the 4th one is the hotel being able to provide or connect you to Mandarin-speaking tour guides. And we're seeing more and more as the Chinese outbound travel market expands and more people are going abroad to new destinations, that the supply of people who can speak Chinese is just, it can't keep up with demand. So just in the past week, there have been articles about both India and Scotland that are both having this boom in Chinese outbound tourism and just don't have the kinds of shop assistants or tour guides who can speak Chinese. And so this is an area where I think technology can help us a lot with both translation technology and kinds of WeChat messaging services that we'll talk about later, and help fill in the gap while people in whatever country it is start to learn more Chinese. So after language issues, the next area where Chinese consumers thought that the hotels could improve was in payment facilities. They listed UnionPay and Alipay, but equally WeChat Pay as another main mobile payment platform could come in here. So nowadays, in most countries around the world, you can use UnionPay cards at many different ATMs and businesses, but not necessarily at hotels. And many hotels also still require for a credit card guarantee when you book a room. And these things are really problematic for Chinese tourists who generally will not have international credit cards. They will have China UnionPay debit cards, as well as Chinese mobile payment options. So this is something that hotels really need to think about being able to accept. And then in other areas to improve are local transportation arrangements and Chinese restaurants, but that is at only 8%. So now we'll move on to talk about WeChat for hotels. So for those of you who don't know WeChat, which I expect is not many of you, WeChat is China's #1 social media platform and mobile app. It has over 1 billion monthly active users, and it is important in basically every aspect of Chinese life these days. And that is no less so for travel marketing. But I think when we talk about WeChat, there's a starting point to get into WeChat with things like inspiration and having an official account and publishing articles to inspire people to want to stay at your property or visit your destination. But WeChat can be used for so much more than that, as we'll get into now. And there's an example here of WeChat that can be used for booking, where you have a traditional platform where you log into Ctrip on a desktop, but now you could just go straight to the hotel's official account and book your trip that way. So as I said, WeChat is a lot more than just the inspiration point, but I will be talking a bit about inspiration now before handing over to Saxon. So as you may know, Dragon Trail has been collecting data on WeChat accounts in the travel industry since the beginning of 2017. And for the first year, we looked at national tourism boards, destination management organizations, airlines, and cruise lines, publishing weekly results of the top ranking accounts and the most popular articles of the week, as well as quarterly reports and annual reports. And we added 2 new categories to our WeChat rankings this April, and one of them was hotels and the other one is museums and attractions. So we haven't been tracking it for long enough to come out with a quarterly report. The first one will be out in July. But already from the past couple of months of tracking hotel accounts, we can see what the top accounts are and the top kinds of themes for the content that these official accounts are publishing. So the top accounts are definitely Starwood and Marriott. I mean, these are just huge hotel brands. They have a really strong presence in China, as well as the world in general. But Hilton is also a standout brand on WeChat, as well as Shangri-La. And then from time to time, we see some other accounts such as Penta Hotels or Intercontinental make it into the top 3. And in terms of themes, membership is very important here, and loyalty programs. So Marriott and Starwood's posts are often about member benefits. They post many times about how members can get free or discounted tickets to go see pop concerts in China, or ways to earn more points, or different things that members can get. And so I think this is important in that loyalty programs really drive brand engagement with consumers. And so it's definitely in the hotel's best interest to get this, so that you're not just putting out content and not knowing exactly what happens to it, but you're using those posts to get people more engaged with your brand directly and to get their kind of information and data. And we'll talk a lot more about that later and how to engage consumers. But this is one way that I think is quite good to do it. Food has been a huge theme, a winning theme on WeChat, really across all kinds of accounts this year. Really the top National Tourism Board, destination management organizations, even cruise lines and airlines are posting about food and doing very well on their articles about food. And Hilton seems to have figured this out quite well. And so they often have very popular articles that focus on their restaurants and other F&B offerings and properties, often around China, or profiles of their chefs. And then also there has been quite a lot of posts that deal with, that talk about Chinese celebrities. This again is a theme that we see across all kinds of travel brands, not just hotels. I don't know if it's specifically because it was Children's Day on the 1st of June, or if it's just picking up on the trend of family travel, but quite a lot of articles on families and kids and family travel have done very well on WeChat so far. And then finally, just news, things like new hotel openings have often done quite well too. So we'll have a lot more information, in-depth information, looking at our first quarter of tracking WeChat accounts for hotels coming out in July. And so at this point, I'm going to hand over to Saxon to talk more about the different touch points at which you can engage with consumers by using WeChat.
So hi everyone, it's Saxon, I'm back. I'm hoping that the static has reduced in the line. Is it okay, Sienna?
I can still hear it, but I would keep going and see how it goes, because before it was okay when we did the practice one, so hopefully it will be okay.
Okay, so what we've been talking about is a bit of an overview of the online travel market as it relates to hotels. And one of the areas that a lot of our customers are coming to us and a lot of our clients are asking us about is, why is it difficult for me to cut through with my content and campaigns on WeChat? You know, there are 1 billion users on the platform, and you know, maybe if I'm doing well, like one of the big brands like Marriott, Starwood, I might get 10,000 views of one of my posts. But we're finding that it is increasingly difficult to cut through that noise. There are many brands vying for attention. And we're also looking at a market that's increasingly dominated by very powerful platforms, whether it's traditional OTAs like Ctrip or whether it's emerging players like Meituan Dianping. Meituan Dianping is an interesting case because it started out more in the entertainment and F&B space. So food delivery, restaurant reviews, tickets for local experiences. So it was an app that was high frequency for local Chinese to enjoy local experiences. But actually now it's taken advantage of and harnessed that audience group to start pushing in the travel space, whether it's through hotels. They're also pushing airlines. There's a marketplace on the platform where you can purchase international air tickets, buy international hotels. As we mentioned, Meituan Dianping is more strong at this stage in domestic space, but it is moving into the international space. But if you've got these kind of platforms, Ctrip, Meituan, Tuniao, Elong, many different platforms vying for the space, it's really difficult to cut through your own channels. So what we think, needs to be a bit of a rethink. Yes, you need to be doing your brand awareness actions, driving inspiration, trying to open the funnel to new traffic, let's say. But we think there's an untapped gold mine for hotel marketers in terms of, let's say, the balance of their investment in marketing, and that's their guests. The guests that are in your lobby, the guests in your rooms, the hundreds of guests that are coming through every day, leveraging the multiple touch points that you have with them, with the power of mobile, and particularly in China with the power of WeChat. As I was mentioning, it's increasingly difficult to get traffic through to your WeChat account. There are many brands that are, I guess, doing well, but not doing well, not sort of reaching the expectations that they would like. And what we see is that the traffic, we would say, is gravitating towards the front end. It's gravitating towards those aggregators. The platforms like Ctrip and Meituan have very powerful WeChat accounts as well. There's a couple of examples here. These are WeChat media aggregators or media platforms. Itiao on the left there is kind of like a more hipstery travel and lifestyle platform that focuses on short videos. Almost every single post that they put out on their WeChat account exceeds 100,000 views. And that could actually mean it goes several times more than 100,000. We don't see that data beyond 100,000. Fika on the right. This is a really nice platform that pushes in domestic and outbound travel, niche destinations and niche hotels, nice campaigns that kind of feature boutique hotels amongst really quality destination content. Again, always exceeding 100,000 views per post. But then when we come down to our WeChat rankings that Sienna was mentioning, here's a recent week on the WeChat rankings, I think last week, we're seeing big brands, they're doing well. Marriott International's WeChat account, in a whole week, it received almost 25,000 views. That's a good result relative to the results we see on a week-by-week basis. But when you think about those media aggregators, those media platforms, or the OTAs on WeChat, it's really a much smaller percentage of content that's being seen on those direct channels. So what about the other touch points that we have with our guests? If you look at this here, it's kind of a typical customer journey diagram for a hotel or for travel. In the top right there, you've got that inspiration phase, that holiday dreaming phase that's leading around to evaluation. And up there, you need to take those actions like creating rich branded content, partnering with KOLs, leveraging user-generated content, buying digital media. These are things you can do to open up the funnel to new consumers and start bringing them down the funnel. But this is where, brands can spend a lot of money and maybe struggle to actually create any conversion because of the power of those other platforms, for example. Then even if someone gets to the evaluation stage, what are their reasons to book direct, to convert with you? Usually a hotel platform is going to be using a CRS that's a bit more complex than the experience they can have on an OTA. On Ctrip, you can book in 2 or 3 clicks, 2 or 3 steps. But on Synexis or another CRS, it might take 5 to 7. And there are different steps that Chinese are not used to that are interposed in that process on those Western platforms. So there's an issue there of performance where, the experience is probably a little bit slower, a little bit more complex. What kind of reasons are you giving them to book direct? Then on the product side, what kind of incentives are there to book direct? If it's such a smooth, easy experience on the OTA, what kind of, incentives around product, pricing, benefits, loyalty, etc. are you offering them at that evaluation stage? You need to think about fine-tuning that product. Even at the booking stage, I think I've already touched on it. is your booking system easy to use? Is it easy to pay? Do you offer Chinese payment methods? Do you offer, pre-booked campaign pricing with WeChat Payment or Alipay? These kinds of things we need to consider as well. But then when you move down the chain a bit more, we think this is where marketing teams and customer experience and operation teams need to get together more and kind of create a crack team that actually looks at investing in some of these customer experience actions. So if someone's already booked with you, you can offer pre-arrival services through a messaging-based customer service platform through your WeChat account. And that's something we're going to get to a little bit later in the deck. We have a product that we've actually brought to market to achieve this. Then at the stay stage, when they're in your hotel, you can provide in-room services, in-hotel services, in-destination services for guests that are outside the hotel enjoying their holiday. You can provide them with services through WeChat, through messaging customer service, to answer their questions, to provide support, to facilitate bookings, etc. And even after they leave the hotel, you've got these kinds of channels through WeChat where you can be reaching out to facilitate word of mouth, so incentivizing UGC and word of mouth marketing. You can be reaching out with loyalty scheme benefits. You can be sending customer satisfaction surveys. There's a lot you can do with these touch points using the power of mobile and WeChat that we want to talk about today. And we think a lot of this needs to hinge on two things. Number one is data. So at all of these touch points, you've got a customer interaction where people are leaving a little bit of a footprint that we need to leverage in some way. And with, a smart strategy on WeChat, some development actions, we can do that. And we think a big input to that data collection process is with messaging. You provide on the front end these good customer experiences, pre-arrival services, stay services, post-stay services with messaging. And the data that you collect for those conversations, you can feed back into that data collection strategy. So as I said, the WeChat customer experience, because you're using your touch points, you're optimizing your touch points with WeChat, you're creating interaction channels. And at every one of these channels, when someone interaction touch points, and at every one of these touch points, when someone, successfully interacts with you, they're leaving a kind of a data fingerprint or footprint. They're leaving things like their WeChat Open ID that we can collect and tag in the back end of our WeChat account. They're leaving some customer data. For example, they might have purchased something with WeChat payment, an incidental, let's say a spa booking inside the hotel. We've got that transaction data that we can marry up to that ID. With these kind of data, we can also collect some of this data through WeChat messaging. So in conversations that we're having, the concierge is having with a customer through the WeChat concierge service, they're collecting, again, the open ID, but also collecting real customer profile data. They're getting to know that customer. Where are they from? Are they married? Do they travel with their parents? Do they have kids? This is rich customer profile data that we can marry up with those WeChat data. And this is the kind of thing that's going to power our WeChat account going into the future. A more CRM-oriented WeChat account where we're segmenting our followers into groups and providing services and content and campaigns that's catered to their different needs and preferences. So I'm going to jump through these 6 touch points today. So WeChat messaging for lead engagement. So this is in the pre-stay phase when someone may or may not have booked. How do we use messaging to generate leads and nurture leads? WeChat messaging for concierge. So once someone's in the hotel, how do we provide, really premium customer service to guests in the hotel that's much more convenient for them and also effortless for the brand? WeChat Wi-Fi, that's a great touch point in a hotel. We can set up a Wi-Fi sign up through WeChat. WeChat Mini Program, this is something everyone's talking about. We can develop a WeChat Mini Program for guest services, for different services in and outside the hotel. Using something like WeChat payment for different incidentals. I know WeChat is not necessarily appropriate for room bookings, depending on what your e-commerce strategy is, but certainly for incidentals in a resort or in a hotel, for F&B, for spa, for tours and things like that, WeChat payment can be leveraged. And then again, back to WeChat messaging, using it for loyalty. So at this inspiration evaluation stage, we've got WeChat messaging for lead engagement. So let's think about a typical customer journey for someone discovering your WeChat account. You pay for some digital media. So here on the left, you've got a WeChat Moments ad that's going to pop up in someone's WeChat Moments feed, like their Facebook timeline. And if they're interested, they might click on it. And that's going to take them through to your hotel WeChat account. You've got some really great offers. You've got really nicely designed, rich content, discounts. You've got membership deals to become a loyalty scheme member. But the content is still kind of idle. It's still static. It's still a passive experience for that customer. And what if they have some questions? What if there are some nuances and things like that that they still have some doubts about, and they want to speak to someone to get those answers that might push them across the line to convert. But where do they go if they don't have some kind of two-way interaction channel with the brand? Secondly, on the brand side, you've got a customer here with some intent who is wavering. They might not end up converting. This is potentially a big opportunity cost. If we're already struggling to bring customers into our channels, we've got to make sure that we do a better job of converting them. So we think messaging here offers us a channel to answer those questions, to really nurture that lead and help bring them across the line, hopefully persuade a conversion, and of course, collect some data along the way. So at the purchase phase, at that booking phase, we can also leverage WeChat messaging here as well. So there are different ways that we can attack this, let's say. So the platform that we've designed, we can customize some templates to help that customer service agent, the reservation agent, for example, pull content about rooms, rates, and other product content and send really accurate, condensed information that's contextual, that's answering all of that customer's questions in the moment, and send it straight back to them through the same channel, kind of in like a WeChat article format. So they can click and browse that content and then confirm whether they want to book. Then do it for me. The agent can actually book on the customer's behalf. That's one way to attack this. But if you've got a higher volume demand, for example, we can develop connectivity with your CRS and they can book in the channel in a couple of clicks. So that's one way that we can look at using a messaging channel also as a conversion channel. Once customers are in a hotel, WeChat messaging for Concierge, I think this is really a great use case. This is a really exciting way, particularly for a bigger hotel, to provide much more, let's say, hands-on dynamic customer service to their guests. And there's a few, sub-use cases, let's call them there, at different touch points. Room service, customers can be ordering room service on their phone from the room. They could be outside the hotel and pre-ordering room service for when they return. Making F&B bookings and other incidental bookings. And I think another really interesting use case, a really exciting use case actually, is around the destination guide, the concierge recommendations. So we're absolutely not saying here, I think, that you dispense with your concierge. That's a really important asset for a hotel. But if your concierge is at the front desk, FaceTiming with many different customers throughout the day, there is some downtime where they're not interacting face to face. They can be servicing guests from all different points in the hotel or outside the hotel using a mobile app version of this platform. Guests can be sending in requests from their room, from outside on a tour, while they're on their way from the airport, and the concierge can be answering those questions very easily. So this is a really great way to provide service on the go. So different staff can be given access to the app, and we can set up different roles in the app for the different staff members. But it really also increases the service team's productivity, the concierge's productivity, to serve multiple guest requests remotely. Another really interesting touch point in the hotel, and we saw, as Sienna said, that Wi-Fi is a really crucial demand of Chinese consumers for hotels. We can actually set up a WeChat Wi-Fi sign-on. So this is a great way to recruit followers. So all of the guests that sign on to the WeChat Wi-Fi in this way, we recruit them as WeChat fans. We collect that WeChat Open ID when that happens. And then there are different functions that we can use automatically in the back end of the WeChat account, like distributing coupons and push notifications after they sign on. This is usually through a QR code scan. But also if they come back to a network that they've signed on before with WeChat Wi-Fi, you can send some push messages or coupons to them again. So this is a nice way to create a bit of loyalty with customers. But as part of a broader campaign strategy, we can actually decide to set up different URLs that the sign-on will link to. So we can set up pages, for example, to display exclusive deals on incidentals in the hotel that week, for example. So it's a good upselling opportunity. We can even look at adding a cell phone verification, probably more for domestic hotels, to actually get some more data there. And we can also tag these users as past guests for WeChat segmentation. So that's going to have long-term benefits to understand, that this is a past guest or at least a past day visitor, and they should be treated differently in our WeChat campaigns. This is just an example here. We can send Starbucks and brands like that, for example, if you use their WeChat Wi-Fi sign-on, they can send you a coupon for coffee, for example. So again, still in the hotel phase, a really hot topic in China at the moment in terms of digital and travel and other consumer products is the WeChat Mini Program. So I think these statistics are already out of date. I believe there's probably something like 650,000 mini programs now and 170 million plus 170 million plus daily active users. Now, WeChat has around 950 million to 1 billion daily active users. So it's still not the most popular platform or use case within the WeChat app, but it's growing very quickly. And why we think it's ideal for hotel guest services is that it's really great for contextual practical use cases because it's lightweight. You don't download this app. So it's actually an app, that's a cloud-based app that's inside the WeChat ecosystem. And therefore it bridges offline to online so efficiently. So different use cases in the hotel can be set up. For example, in the room, a QR code might take someone to the room service part of the mini program. If they're at the concierge desk, if they scan a QR code there from the concierge, it might take them directly to the page that's about, the surrounding attractions, restaurants, and other destination information that's going to help them have a better time while they're traveling with you. So it does actually work in context. It's quite different to a traditional mobile app in that sense. This also means it's easier to distinguish mere followers, let's say on WeChat, from other kinds of groups, such as customers who have purchased in store. So real guests, we can start distinguishing them from other kinds of leads and consumers in your network. And it really does help you to develop a multitude of user experiences and serve needs, both on and offline, all within the WeChat ecosystem. So it is actually a really huge growing area in the China market. And we think it has some great use cases for hotels, for the guest experience. So here's one example. This is the Hilton mini program, which launched in April or May. It really focuses on, let's say, the concierge recommendations. So it's got it's a location-based mini program. So it provides dozens of navigable concierge recommendations. So for example, nearby Hilton hotel. So this is, locating me in Shanghai. Nearby attractions, nearby restaurants, so nearby F&B, bars and restaurants, and also city itineraries. And it's all location-based and there's a map built in there. So you can use the LBS to navigate around the city and really maximize your experience, which is a great tool for Chinese consumers in a foreign city, for example. Another use case here is the Peninsula Hotel in Beijing. So they're actually positioning their mini program more for, I would say, locals around the hotel or sort of day visitors. This is more the visitor economy use case rather than hotel guests. So they're selling, for example, Peninsula has pretty famous patisserie and bakery. So they're using that brand to leverage sales through the mini program, and you can pay for those cakes with your WeChat payment. They're also offering discounted gym memberships. So this is clearly aimed at Beijing residents around the hotel, trying to bring in that weekend business, for example, those day visitors. But they're also running, an interesting pre-booked room campaign for the World Cup. So there's packages, involving rooms with access to a small cinema to watch games, with F&B services. It's a package especially for the World Cup, and it can be purchased with WeChat payment. So even quite expensive packages, 10,000 RMB can be purchased with WeChat payment in just a couple of clicks. Another really important in-hotel touch point is payments, which I touched on already briefly, for incidentals, for example, while someone's staying with you. So just a quick statistic, 65% of Chinese use mobile payments in their last trip overseas, and that contrasts with just 11% of Americans. And also, I think I saw a statistic recently, something like 11 or $12 trillion was spent through mobile payments in China in 2017. This is Alipay, WeChat Pay, and some other smaller platforms. So WeChat Pay we're going to look at today because we're focusing on that platform. Already has 40% market share, maybe slightly higher now in 2018, and it's growing very quickly, up from 20% in 2015. It's really ubiquitous. This is my silly slide for the webinar, which I seem to be adding recently. This is a cat holding a WeChat payment barcode in a tea shop in Shanghai. So this is something that we're using every day here in our life in Shanghai as expats and as local Chinese, to buy everything from fruit and vegetables to buying our taxis to paying for things in hotels. Why offer WeChat payment in your hotel? I think number one, 91% of travelers are more willing to spend if mobile payment is offered. This is pretty fresh Nielsen research in the last few months. I think that's a really good sign. But, of course it's qualitative research, but I think there are trends across some of the research that's come out in 2017 and 2018 that suggests that it does increase the propensity to buy. It certainly makes it easier to spend money. So I think sometimes we lose track because we're using it every day. It's easier for money to go out the door and not to notice it, I would say. And the other really important point about mobile payment or WeChat payment is that you're collecting data. So you're getting all of those transaction details and you're mapping that against the user info, the open ID. So that's another tagging issue there where we can start separating or segmenting real paying customers from, say, ordinary leads. Couple of use cases here. Atlantis Sanya uses WeChat payment, Alipay for pre-booked room campaigns and also for resort incidentals. I mean, if you know Atlantis Sanya, you'll know it's a huge integrated resort. So there are many on-site incidentals that can be paid for with mobile payment. That's actually one of our own case studies. We developed that solution for them. And then you've also got, as I mentioned, that Peninsula Beijing case study. So offering discounted gym memberships to Chinese in Beijing using WeChat payment. I think if we get out of the hotel, you've left, we're looking at the post-stay phase. This is, you need to own that customer still. You need to leverage that touch points. You need to use those touch points that you've had with the customer in hotel to continue that dialogue with them. This is something that, this is an advantage of hotels over things like the OTAs. They don't have access to customers in this kind of way. So in the short term, because the customers have interacted with some of these touch points, like for example, WeChat payment or the messaging concierge service or the WeChat Wi-Fi, we've actually got functionality inside WeChat to reach back out to that customer with a customized message within 48 hours. So we could send them, for example, a guest survey on WeChat or an offer, a limited time offer to join the loyalty scheme. In the longer term, we can look at integrating a hotel loyalty scheme into the WeChat account and then offering, one of those staff members that's using the mobile app or the PC backend of the messaging system can be assigned to loyalty, for example, and they can be addressing member inquiries, handling points management and much more. I think this is a really premium personalized service you can give to your loyalty members. And that's, after all, what loyalty is all about for hotels. Longer term, the WeChat CRM that I mentioned, we're starting to tag and segment our fan base in our WeChat account so we can do much more targeted campaigns in future. For example, past guest campaigns. And in that sense, we're moving away from that mass content marketing that is, not necessarily tending to work for a lot of brands. We're creating really nice, really creative, quite engaging content, but it's not necessarily seen by those who we want to see it. So we need to actually use that segmentation in the WeChat backend to improve the ROI of our campaigns. So we can target past guests, we can target families with kids, for example. We can find out about our followers that have our families with kids by using our messaging customer service, for example, because that's when we're really getting to know people. We're asking them questions, are they single, are they married, do they travel with their kids, etc. So we can start sending the kind of content and campaigns that our followers prefer and they need. So just on the right there, this is an example of the kind of customer profile information that we can start building in the back end of our messaging customer service platform. That's a simplified mock-up. So I am going to give a plug to our product. I mean, I wanted to talk about this more generally. I think there are so many interesting opportunities across all of these different touch points to really start engaging with our guests in a much more effective way to collect that data and then feed that back in to the lead generation loop. So we're starting to create a customer journey loop. I think this is a big opportunity. And as I mentioned quickly, I think before, marketers, customer experience people, sales, operations need to get out of their silos and work together on some of this stuff because it really cuts across those stakeholder groups and those lines of authority. Can Talk is the name of our messaging customer service platform for WeChat. We've designed it specifically for travel brands. It has a PC version and a mobile version, which I've got quickly up here. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail because what we'll do is send a product introduction deck along with the PPT deck that we presented today. So I won't give you too much of a sales spiel. I think that's it for me, Sienna.
Great. Thank you very much, Saxon. Before we wrap up, I'd just like to tell everyone about our next webinar. It will be on Wednesday, the 18th of July, and it will be a half year in review webinar. Oh, sorry, Saxon, could you go back to the...
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. A half year in review for 2018. So we'll be looking at the biggest travel trends for the Chinese outbound travel market, as well as the biggest new digital trends happening in China. And moreover, by that point, we should have H1 data on all of our WeChat rankings, including the first ever quarterly report that includes hotels, museums, and attractions. So we'll present all of that information as usual at 2 different times for different time zones. And there's already an address where you can read more about the webinar and sign up for it. And moreover, I would just direct everyone to our website. We'll be coming out with an article next week looking at many different things that hotels can do in terms of attracting Chinese travelers from today's webinar that you just listened to, as well as the morning session, which was a masterclass webinar for hotels. And there's always lots of WeChat rankings and other reports and news to stay up to date with the Chinese outbound travel market on our website, as well as on our social media channels. So I know we've gone a little bit late at this point, but if anyone still has questions, please ask them using the Q&A button. I know also that we've answered some of your questions beforehand. And if you do think of anything after the webinar, you can always get in touch with us. My email address is on the screen right now, and you can always email communications@dragontrail.com as well with your questions.